Greetings and welcome back to Hegel on the beach. Maybe my best location ever. Look at that. Fabuloso. Okay, amazing. And today we're going to do tragedy. When you got no soul and you lose control, it's tragedy. The Bee Gees. Actually, we're going to be doing Antigone and Greek tragedy and lawbreakers. So, Antigone appears in Phenomenology in the section on reason, which is 437, but again, more importantly, on the section on spirit, which is 470. So, Antigone was a play written by the Greek dramatist Sophocles. So, she's the daughter of Oedipus. So, as we know, Oedipus married his mother. So, it's a lot about blood, very close blood relationships, and, monarchy and rural families marrying into each other and so on. And the action takes place in the city of Thebes. And Thebes is an unusual place because Thebans believed they'd sprung from the earth. So they didn't have any kind of blood relatives, was the story partly behind it, but we won't go into that. So there's a civil war, and the brothers of Antigone, who are Polynices and Eteocles, hope I'm pronouncing that right, they're on opposite sides. Polynices attacks Thebes. Both brothers are killed, and so Creon, who's the uncle, becomes the king. And Creon won't allow Antigone to bury her brother Polynices in the city because he was a traitor and he caused the war. Now, this is quite a long video, this one, a bit longer than usual, but I read the play because I'd only read sort of like, commentaries on it in relation to, it's just a fantastic play. It's one of the best plays, and you can just read it dead quick. It's a fabulous play. Anyway, so Antigone says, no one will bury me, brother. She buries Polynices and she's sentenced to death. And it all ends badly as all the main characters die, okay? So there's been a lot of like commentary and ink spilled about why Antigone appears in Phenomenology and its significance. Now, Antigone was a defender of traditional, religious and family values. But she breaks the law, and she's forced to break the law in order to do this by entering the exclusive male domain of the political governance of the Greek city-state. It's all fellas, okay? In order to press her claim to these traditional values. So in spite of herself, in spite of her strict observance of family values, she moves away from that into becoming a political animal. And she's important for several reasons. First of all, although she's a champion of the values of the gods, the family, the subordinate role of women, all that is 100% true. She is ironically, and above all else, a lawbreaker, and we've come to see that. Remember when I did the thing about, I think video 1, which was about Jesus breaking the law. So this theme is obviously in the back of Hegel's head. So again, she's trying to do her best in her role-bound duty as a woman and a subordinate female, and she breaks free from this role by entering the political sphere. And of course she fails, and it's a tragedy because, in a sense, it's an important thing because tragedy does play a huge part in Hegel, I think, and we can't get away from tragedy. That's my view on it. But anyway, Antigone, she's an illustration. She's in fact an embodiment, albeit fictional embodiment, of Hegel's concept of spirit. Back to paragraph 351. So let's talk about spirit. Hegel says, the labour of the individual for his needs is just as much a satisfaction of the needs of others as of his own. And the satisfaction of his own needs he obtains only through the labour of others. Now that's in the section on reason, but this section also tells us something about Hegel's mysterious concept of spirit. So Hegel's idea of spirit, it was clearly influenced, if you listen to that passage, by Adam Smith. And Smith's idea seems to have given about, sort of everyone's labour, everyone helping everyone else unconsciously, the invisible hand. That seems to have given Hegel a successor concept to, remember love in the first video where Hegel thought if everyone just loves everyone, that's going to be the solution to, the problems of, the early modern age, late 18th century. And in terms of a unifying substance of society, they seem to think that was the unit. Love couldn't be the unifying concept, it had to be something else. Okay, that was video 1, but probably not. I said that Hegel put love before law in his early writings. Jesus before Abraham. Doing what was spontaneously right over consulting a textbook. Someone's fallen over, I help pick them up. I don't consult with Kant's moral law. Should I pick up that man on the floor? Does this action accord with the moral law? Okay, right, I'll pick him up. Okay, no. You just help them, okay? So Hegel didn't go for the morality that instructs you from a textbook, whether it's the Bible, whether it's Kant, whether it's Karl Marx, but at the same time, his original model of human sociality, love, that didn't really seem to work in the context of a modern society. I mean, it's just like a bit ridiculous, isn't it? To walk, I love you, man. It's like, it's just like, kind of dope fiends who are like walking. It's not a really realistic model for modern society. But when he read Adam Smith, this seemed to give a model for human interaction. I'm quoting from somebody here that emphasized the social whole while at the same time preserving the individuality of the singular human being. This was the new development and helped Hegel arriving at the concept of spirit. That might be me writing that, or I might have quoted somebody. Okay, so paragraph 439, Hegel tells us what spirit is. So this is spirit. This is the whole deal of the book. Spirit is the substance and the universal permanent essence equal to itself. It is the unshakable and indissoluble ground and starting point for the doing of everyone. And it is the purpose and goal as the in itself in thought of all self-consciousness. So spirit's the whole deal. Spirit's everything. Still a bit misty, isn't it, really? But basically, there's nothing else but humans living together, not necessarily in perfect harmony, but in a community. And the section on the Greeks that I've been talking about in previous videos falls under the section on spirit, because despite their horribleness, their warlike brutality, their slavery, their misogyny and so on, Hegel detected in ancient Greece, as loads of people did in the late 18th century, with Greco-philia, everyone loved the Greeks. We still love the Greeks, don't we? But everyone detected in ancient Greece something special, something about the development of spirit, a real community, notwithstanding, the murder and I think paedophilia as well, and it might even be in Thebes, and Athens, so notwithstanding all that, right? I know it sounds like I'm not selling it very well, but lots of people love the Greeks, don't they? They do it at school. The Greeks are great. The Greeks built monuments. The Greeks paint. The Greeks produce great literature. The Greeks so all that is true. Okay, so we're just saying how complicated it is. So people did look at this Greek community. Anyway, that's my take on Hegel's spirit, why he was writing on at this particular juncture. So spirit is present within the ancient Greeks, but it's embodied in a small communal entity, warts and all, as I've explained. So in paragraph 442, Hegel explains this development. So it begins with the ethical life of the Greek city-state. This is set up, of course, this is set up by, which I'm going to come to, a split between male and female and stuff like that. So there are these terrible clay foundations underneath this Greek city-state. But it's eroded. This community's eroded by reason itself. Characters like Socrates question the gods. They question prevailing morality. They corrupt the morals of the young because they're talking about asking why. Why is this the case? They're not giving out any answers, but they're really probing very deeply into the foundations of society. So that's why he's killed in the end, Socrates. Anyway, so the people like Socrates who questioned the prevailing morality, and this in turn, it led to the rise, or the triumph, I should say, of abstract right in the shape of the Roman Empire. And eventually we get to Christianity, Luther, and the Enlightenment, and the French Revolution. That was really quick, wasn't it, that? Moving from the Greeks to the French Revolution, and then German idealism. Yeah, but that's what spirit is. You see it moving around a lot, okay, historically speaking. But why is Antigone important in this particular part of the book? So let's start by looking at a contrary perspective. Okay, Patricia Mills wrote an essay, and there's plenty out there. I think, what's she called? The famous American, she's like Judith Butler. She also, I think, follows in these footsteps. So Patricia Mills wrote an essay called Hegel's Antigone. She thinks that Antigone is a creature of patriarchy. Partly true, yeah. She says that Hegel's universal is necessarily male, and male isn't universal. And that's true as well, partly true. She says, humanity is both male and female, and the claim to encompass the universality of human experience must allow for woman's experience and participation outside the sphere of the family. it must allow for a more comprehensive account of than the Antigone Hegel provides. Okay. And for her, Antigone's no hero. She's simply reasserting the established sexual divide of the Greek city-state. The men do the fighting and the governing, and the women stay at home and cook. And they actually look after the household gods and don't get involved with the city governance, but there's a division of labour. So they don't get involved with the polity, as it's called. So when Antigone isn't able to bury Polynices, her brother, she isn't a martyr to the cause of women, according to Mills, even though she dies for her beliefs. And she is seen, like in the Christian ethos, as being like an early forerunner of saints and stuff like that. But Mills says she's a martyr to patriarchy and tradition because she dies to defend the right of women to be oppressed, which is a good point, okay? Because she dies to uphold traditional sexual stereotypes, okay? So I think she makes a good point, but I think it's more than this. I think she's probably missed the point, which I'll talk about now. So in Greek society, okay, we only become individualized, real individuals, with our death and burial. That's something that Hegel has talked about. So Greek society is rigidly role-bound, like North Korea. And the role of women is to bury the dead. So they can't fight, they can't vote, they can't speak. The role of the woman is at home, her role is with the family and with the divine, it's called, or the spiritual aspect of society. The role of women is also to give the deceased some kind of individual send-off. So Antigone is important because in death, the deceased becomes more than a Greek warrior and a citizen, because that's what his role is. They become an individual person when they die. So the women of Greek society, exemplified by Antigone, they've got originally role-bound duties to bury the dead. But in doing so, they kind of discover a form of individuality. So, like, Johnny has a great life. He's a father to 2 beautiful children. He used to do that. So when you die, when you give the funeral oration, those kind of things, they concentrate on what an individual is, not what his role is, but what he did or what she did. But I'm talking about, in this case, it's about the brother, isn't it? So Antigone and the role of Greek women was to foster this incipient sense of individuality that you get at a funeral. And so there's a permanent tension in Greek society. But she goes much further than this. So she isn't just individuating at the funeral oration and saying, right, that's it. Okay, boys, go on back to the Spartans and go and have a battle with them. No, she's not saying that. She takes it one step further because it's after the battle, okay? She decides to become a political actor, but her actions expose precisely this flaw in Greek society. The man-woman split is exposed by her actions. Antigone doesn't mean to step outside her role. It's not intention, which we might come to about intentions, because intentions are not really important, are they? If you think about it, I really, like Blair said, I didn't really want to go to war in Iraq. He did it anyway, didn't he? So your intentions are irrelevant. Now, she probably wouldn't want to stay at home. Sorry, she probably would want to stay at home. But the inbuilt flaws of Greek society change all that. She breaks the law. So that was a long time ago. So let's look at a modern parallel. So there is a Russian mobilization video that's desperately trying to recruit men for Putin's war in Ukraine. The advert asked a security guard, a weightlifter, and a taxi driver about the meaning of their lives in Russian subtitles underneath, okay? So if I can, I'll show it. So the advert's conclusion is in bold letters: be a man, be a man, be a man. Maleness and patriarchy as the basis of the war machine is still with us. It was there, you see it in Antigone, and it's there now. By the way, there's a Ukrainian video which uses exactly the same footage, the same images, it borrows it, but it subverts them with a different answer to the Russian war machine. Their subtitles read, I'm not saying the Ukrainian regime is perfect, I'm just saying this video exemplifies the difference. So their subtitles read, do you want to kill children? Do you want to behead people? Be a human. So it removes the gender from it, this male war machine. If I get a chance, I'll show it. So the answer to the war machine of Thebes, the Greek city-states, and even Russia isn't patriarchy, but humanity. Looking back, it's not too much of a stretch to see Antigone as in the ancient seed. It's the ancient seed of a cry of the feminine against the inevitable warlike nature of the patriarchal state. So it's a cry against this male-female split and patriarchy and female oppression. One other interesting and terrible parallel, almost not a parallel, it's kind of a repeat of history. So Antigone is not allowed to bury her brother. Okay, that's the whole story. Ironically, and you see it in this war. War brings all the society's contradictions. I know it's a cliche, but in Ukraine, the Orthodox Church refused to allow the burial of a Ukrainian soldier. And the modern resolution of that problem was for the people, men and women, to take over the church and perform the burial rites themselves. So the issue of burial is extremely important. And again, if I get a chance, maybe look at the link, or I'll put the video in if I can now. So moving on. So a fellow called Paul Gragel wrote an article, Hegel's Antigone, Birth of the Constitution from the Spirit of Tragedy, November the 9th, 2021. So he's professor of European law. So why is he interested in Antigone? And he's a constitutional expert. So he says, Hegel was captivated by the tragedy of Antigone from the earliest times. By the way, this play also intrigued his friends and colleagues like Hegel. Remember Hegel, the guy who was locked in the tower who went mad? And I mentioned it, I think maybe in video 1, who was a colleague of Hegel. So Hegel himself was also a brilliant. So Hegel talked about this very issue about Antigone and about its relevance for the constitutional settlement of this split. Anyway, Hegel himself was a brilliant classicist and apparently translated Antigone as a student. Bit of wind here. And in his later lectures on aesthetics, he described Antigone as the most magnificent and satisfying work of art of this kind. And he thought that the character of Antigone was the noblest figure that had ever appeared on the earth. So this is what he wrote later on. So for Gragel, Antigone becomes a tragic heroine when worlds collide and ethical codes collide. He says, Hegel's Antigone is an allegory of the ancient polis and of the demise of the ethical order and the subsequent transition to legal status. Okay? The significance of Antigone is therefore not that she defends the role of women to look after the dead, or the traditional role of women to be at the home. He describes it as a torn ethical order. On the one hand, there's the human law of the male government. On the other hand, there is the divine female law of the household. These two separate types of law are illustrated in the play. So Creon's decree that the body of Polynices, Antigone's brother, should remain unburied because he attacked the city of Thebes, that represents the written human law. Okay. On the other hand, the divine law commands Antigone to bury her brother as a family member. So this is Greek tragedy as we know and love it. It's impossible to apply both laws simultaneously, which is what tragedy is. But it also tells us about universality. In the play, the laws or values or the norms of Greek society can't be universal because in Thebes, some people are members of the community and others aren't. So citizens are members of the community and slaves and women aren't. So, carrying on, Hegel, beg your pardon, forgive the noise in the background. Hegel contrasts this human law with the universal divine law, which applies to all individuals. So actually, all Greek city-states subscribed to the Greek law. They all believed in the Greek god and so on. But anyway, the human law demands that individuals only meet a standard of recognition when they comply with its norms. The divine law is about the relationship between living people and their dead ancestors who deserve unconditional recognition and a burial, irrespective or regardless of how they lived. So for Hegel, the concept of recognition resolved the antagonism at the heart of the Greek city-state. So contradictions can persist, and contradictions doesn't mean resolution. There's no guarantee. Societies can have serious inbuilt flaws, as I've said, but they can survive. However, in this case, the conflict between the human and the divine, it leads to the eventual breakup of Greek society. When conflict breaks out into the open, the social cohesion of that sort of very delicate split between male and female, it dissolves, and the result is eventually a constitutional order, Rome. So a rebel like Antigone, by openly advocating civil disobedience, also Socrates, she brings the contradiction between the opposing orders to a head. Creon, representing human law, and Antigone, representing the divine, are both in it to win it. There's no stepping back. That's what tragedy is about. They both lack a universal conception of recognition, and they can't put any distance between themselves and their social roles, or their duties, or their positions. Groggle says, those who belong to different normative orders cannot mutually recognize each other if they only remain within their own and never come together within the framework of one single order. For Antigone, recognition comes far too late, shortly before their death. Fate ultimately punishes them both and brings about the end of the ethical community of the polis, based equally on the human and divine law. Okay, so that's it. It is just, it's not like saying, look, this play sorts it all out. It's just an indication of the way things like spirit was going. Okay, this contradiction within Greek society. Hegel's answer, according to Paul Greig, and I see a lot of truth in it, is that the legal standing of the constitutional or the legal order of Roman society, it was a solution. It was an innovation to this permanent dilemma. Paragraph 477 of Phenomenology describes this resolution in terms we describe this Roman order. And it's not nice. The apparent beauty and charm of Greek society is replaced by, according to Hegel, the universal unity into which the living, immediate unity of individuality and substance withdraws is the spiritless commonwealth, which has ceased to be substance, itself unconscious of individuals, and in which they now have their value of self-essences and substances in accordance with their singular being for itself. The universal split up into the atoms of absolutely many individuals. This dead spirit is an equality in which all counts as each as persons. Roman individuals, therefore, that's what Hegel says. So Roman individuals are legal persons. They introduced this concept of legal personhood. And they're capable of recognition as persons independently from their community. So it's like a person is just who, I know it's not quite as simple as this, but it's who their rights are. So that's why a company can be a legal person, and that comes from Roman law. So the legal person claims the status of being recognized. It's a very undeveloped way, of course, but Greece wasn't like a centralized government like Rome, which needed that concept. Greek had city-states, Rome was one, and it needed this very broad concept, this legal concept of the person. So Antigone's a character who's written up as a heroine because of her bravery, unflinching commitment. We're on our side, there's no question about it. I mean, come on, who roots for Creon, who's the dictator? However, as Groggle points out, she's also incapable of recognizing the other. That is Creon. She doesn't stand for moral insight, but pure fanaticism, according to Groggle, because she says that a brother is irreplaceable. She's echoing a natural and not a human value. Antigone doesn't question the divine law, but Antigone is not just a hero because of her courage. She's a hero because she breaks the law, even though she's a fanatic, and she takes a stand and becomes an individual. So the Greeks didn't have the concept of modern individuality. That's what all the Hegel commentators say, and not just them. So there's a lot of truth to this. They didn't have the concept of modern individuality as we know it. But when we go beyond the law, we see something changes. The individual starts to emerge in this sense. Okay. So Groggle points out that Hegel's friend Hegel, and remember the guy in the tower and so on, he lived in Tübingen. So I mentioned him about it relates to German Romanticism. So he was put in the care of the doctor who invented the screaming mask, because he had sort of melancholia for a year because he was deemed mad. Groggle says that Hegel had an interesting insight into the meaning of Antigone, I mentioned before. His argument is that it is the formal and the anti-formal balance between Creon and Antigone that makes possible a republican state. That is, a constitution created in line with reason and formalizes individuals as persona or legal entities. And that's what Roman society, a lot of it was about creating this concept of a legal entity. So you see today, Roman law underpins so much of what our law is. But of course, it destroys, it destroys individuality. Everyone's an atom. There's no, I should say, it destroys community. There's no, oops, there goes the wind. So it destroys any concept of community, like the Greek community where, all for one and one for all, everyone's just out for themselves in Roman society. But nevertheless, it has this concept of legal personhood. Okay, so apparently, I don't know this because I haven't checked it out, but in Hegel's translations of the Greek poet Pindar, where he stresses that societal change can only succeed through peaceful means, through law. So that's what Hegel was getting at. So you can see, I've said a lot of what Hegel's saying was like replicated by his mates, or he was picking up on ideas that his friends had given him. So Hegel's interpretation is that the only resolution is recognition of all parties, not the violent suppression or the killing of the opponent. Only that can create, a constitutionally organised, let me see if this carries on, constitutionally organised, nearly finished, so I don't want to end up, I'll carry on here, because am I nearly there? Legal system, okay. So this constitutionally organised legal system, the one that Hegel was talking about, that option wasn't available to Antigone. So the conflict between Antigone and Creon was inevitable. That's the essence, as I've said previously, of tragedy, inevitability. So the war in Ukraine is the same. Our state is not Thebes. Let me just fix this. Our state is not Thebes, but Europe. Dictatorship cannot live with democracy. They are two different, massively different value systems. There's an inescapable conflict between the two systems. So I saw Lula, who was the president of Brazil the other day, and he was saying he went to China, the biggest dictatorship on the planet, and he called for peace. Peace with genocide. I mean, it's just ludicrous. But I think Lula represents a figure in Antigone, the character of Ismene, who's Antigone's sister. She acts, when I say the voice of reason in the play, that means the voice of pacification. They both try to come to terms with Creon's rule, and she says, basically, come on, let's not have this conflict. Let's just keep on with the old order. Let's just have peace. So the play should tell us that this is a reactionary view. It's this type of pacifism, the Ismene pacifism, that dictators love to hear. More on the Roman world next time, and I'm not advocating war, I'm advocating constitutional order. But nevertheless, that constitutional order has got to be fought for. Two competing values can't fight each other. They can't fight each other. You have to have democracy winning against dictatorship. Even if that democracy is imperfect and terrible, the constitutional road cannot coexist with dictatorship in the modern world. I think that's another lesson of Antigone. Roman world next time. Adios from Las Graciosas and the top of this island. See you later.